Hey everyone, thanks for joining. We're going to give it a few minutes for folks to join. See some folks trickling in. Welcome, welcome. Going to give it a few more minutes. Awesome. Okay, let us get started. So thank you all so much for being here today. My name is Carolyn and I'm on the organizing team with URx. We're really excited to be partnering with our very own community partner Forage on this very timely discussion. Now, first things first, if you have recently been impacted by the layoffs that have been happening in the industry for the past several months, our hearts go out to you. Just know that the URx community is here to support you in any way possible. And although the content in this discussion may not be immediately applicable to your day-to-day right now, we really do hope that the session is valuable when you get the next opportunity. And now let's talk. You all are here for a particular reason. The industry has been quite tumultuous over the past few months. And if you're still employed, great. But now the reality is that your teams might be very lean. You might just be a team of one now, or just in general, it just might be a really strapped environment and you might just be stretched a little bit too thin. And so we wanted to bring in some industry leaders that can talk about their experiences in these kinds of environments. And then hopefully you can walk away from the session with good insights. So let's jump right in. Before we begin, we wanted to give a quick intro of URx. So if this is your first time attending a URx Roundtable and webinar, well, welcome. Thank you for being here. We are a OneRec community for recruiting professionals focused on university and emerging talent. And so if this is your first time joining us, just know that we have ongoing discussions about a lot of different topics ranging from recruiting products, global recruiting, university recruiting, recruiting operations, all in our OneRec Slack channel. So go to onerec.com/join. I'm going to pass it off to my friend Laura, who will be talking about Forage.
Thank you, Carolyn. Forge is so happy to be here today and to be partnering with URx. I want to, before jumping in and talking about Forge and introducing myself, I want to echo what Carolyn said. For anybody who's been impacted by the layoffs or the furloughs or the RIFs, please know that everybody is thinking of you, and we are here to help. So find your peers, find those of us that are offering help on LinkedIn, and take us up on those offers. Let me tell you a little bit about Forage. You can see on the screen here, we've got a quick snippet, but in a nutshell, Forage partners with employers to build day-in-the-life simulations that will bring to life your industry, your company, your roles, the whole time making sure that we're giving foragers or students, early career talent, an opportunity to build their skills and their confidence. All of this will result in more highly motivated talent that will move through your pipeline more expediently. So if you're interested in learning more, we've got a link there, and then I know it's also posted in the chat. So if you're interested in learning more about us, please go ahead and take advantage of that. That is not necessarily what we're here to talk about today, though. We are here to talk about doing more with less. So I'm going to ask the panelists to come on camera while I give a quick intro, and then they're all going to do an introduction of themselves. So Carolyn just indicated we've been hearing about layoffs and furloughs. I just recently read a study that indicated that 59% of US employees have either experienced a reduction or a restructuring in the last 3 months. And all of these things are obviously changing the dynamic and the sizes of teams all the way around us. That same study also talked about how 82% of respondents felt that when their teams are restructured or reduced, they do not see a corresponding reduction in workload. So people are being asked to do more with less. Even people who aren't impacted by reductions are feeling stressed, lots of anxiety, feeling overwhelmed at work. So this is resulting in a bit of a clash, because you can't pour from an empty cup. So today we're going to focus on how can you keep your teams and yourself focused and motivated during these really uncertain times. We're also going to share some tips and techniques to help you concentrate your efforts on what's the most important and what's going to be the most impactful for yourself and for your teams. And I'm not going to do this alone today. I've got 3 amazing panelists with me. So Whitney, Ernesto, and Lucy are all going to introduce themselves next, and then we're going to launch into the content. And I just want to let everybody know that after we go through this panel section, we're going to leave time for Q&A. So please jump into the Q&A section at the bottom and put your questions as we go. Happy to go ahead and answer them on the fly, as well as save them toward the end if that makes most sense. So Lucy, are you willing to kick us off and introduce yourself first?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today. I'm Lucy Tobias. I lead our emerging talent team at Dropbox. I sit in San Jose, California. It's about 45 minutes south of San Francisco. My team sits within the talent acquisition org, so I report directly to our VP of TA. I know emerging talent or the like sits in different places, so I wanted to share that. And my team's about the size of 8, 10 with coordinators. They don't technically sit with me, but they dotted line report to me. And then last year, we hired about 160 interns, apprentices, and early career talent for Dropbox.
Thanks, Lucy, and thanks for being
Yes.
with us today. Whitney, how about you jump in next and introduce yourself?
Perfect. I'm Whitney Smith. I am with TD Bank. I live in Maryland and am remote, but I support our New York City office. I'm a senior campus recruiter for the security side of the bank. And combined, we have 175 summer interns and full-time analysts in our TD security space.
Thanks, Whitney, and thanks for being with us today. Ernesto, I saved the best for last. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you. I appreciate it. My name is Ernesto Sosa. I am the senior manager for early talent programs and university relations here at Comcast Central Division. We're based, Central Division is everything Central Time Zone and 2 or 3 states in the Eastern Standard Time. So we're based out of Atlanta, Georgia. which is gloomy and ugly and not very energizing today, but we'll try to bring the most out of it. Our program it's 4 years old. We started with about 50 interns in 2019, and then now we are ready to welcome 102 this year in multiple cities amongst our footprint. And we also have 2 rotational programs that we welcome alumni of our program into it. So in total, we bring about 150, 120 early talent group coming in. My mighty team who are on the call, shout out to them. There are 4 phenomenal young individuals that have a lot of passion about not only developing young talent, but also creating the most amazing experience for all of our candidates, all of our hiring managers, and all of our partners that participate on our program. So I do want to thank them for everything that they do every day.
And let me thank you, Ernesto, for that intro and for being here. And I realized I didn't introduce myself. Let me do that quickly, and then we'll launch into the content. So I'm obviously with Forage. I'm heading up early career insights at Forage. I've been there only for, 4 months now, so short time. I joined having been a client of Forage in my role previous, which was head of early career talent acquisition for Cognizant. My remit included all of the Americas. And prior to working at Cognizant, I was a university relations leader at EY for 13 years. Prior to that, I worked in higher ed directly. So both as a faculty member and an administrator. So I get this equation from both sides of the coin, so to speak. So let's launch into content today. And I'm going to ask the panel some questions. And we've obviously spent some time together already. So we're going to launch into the content, and they're each going to share their insights on all of these questions. Reminder, everybody, put your questions into the bottom. I'll be monitoring while our panelists are talking. So I'll bring them forward as they match with the topic we're going. So both Carolyn and I at the top talked about focus. How do you guys get your teams to focus on what matters most? And how are you creating and communicating a really clear vision to help your team members concentrate on the work that is most critical? Ernesto, why don't you kick us off?
All right, I owe you all $1. I just started talking and being on mute. So we have a jar here that we do that. This is an interesting one, right? So you mentioned difficult times and layoffs and everything else. I think that for my team, one of the things that I do the most is I try to provide to them as much information as I can before they even think about the information that they need to be worried about. So eliminating the noise. So transparency, a clear vision. This is what we need to do. This is what it is. Your job is safe. We don't have to worry about this. You don't have to worry about this other thing. These are the things that you need to be focusing on and not worry about the what is. So transparency, just helping them understand that they can come to me, they can have any questions that they want, and they are going to get not necessarily a sugar-coated answer, a realistic answer. And sometimes I don't have the answer for it. And sometimes I can share the answer to them, but I will tell them the reasons why and not make them feel that, oh, every time I go to Ernesto, I just ask a question and I feel worse when I go to him than when I don't go to him, right? So having that transparency and understanding that that everything has an impact, that all the terms connect with each other, that all the little pieces connect to each other, the why we do the things that we do and the reason why we do them the way that we do them, extremely important to keep them focused on what they need to be doing at that particular time. Then the other thing, 2 things, and that's one. The other thing is give them credit for the work that they do. I don't go into meetings and presenting their work that they have put together to other people as it is my work or the team's work. Yes, it is the team's work, but they all know, right? So if Blaine is a coordinator on our team, if he prepares something and I'm presenting that to somebody else, he's going to be there, right? He's the one that did it. He's the one that needs to serve. He's the one that needs to do that. And I think that gives them a lot of peace of mind and understanding that what the vision is and what is the critical work, what is busy work, and what they need to be focusing on as well.
That helps. It sounds like it also would create some nice two-way communication between your team and leaders. That's fabulous. Lucy, do you want to weigh in here as well? How are you helping your team members concentrate on what's the most critical work?
Yeah, I think similar to Ernesto, it's like really finding that vision or North Star for the teams to focus on or kind of stay focused on, especially this year. And so something that was really important for me as we are ending January is to develop and share a full year strategy for my team. So an emerging talent strategy, but then how does that actually ladder up to our TA organization strategy, our HR people team strategy, and then even to the company? Because I think so many times we're focused on early career talent or a very niche pool of talent, and you don't always see how that ladders up or where does that connection, that dotted line, like what does that actually mean for me? And so I think that really helped root my team, and the work that they're doing is important, even if it feels like we're scaling back quite a bit this year. Something I also shared was my 3-year roadmap. So keeping people really excited, keeping my team excited that this year may feel different than years past, but what does year 2 and 3 look like? And how do we continue to build on what the vision is? I think has really ignited a lot of excitement for the team as well. So this year, we're really just focused on getting it right, focused on the foundational work so that we can build faster in the next 2 years. And then also part of the strategy was also to share KPIs. So not just this like big lofty strategy, but let's get tactical. Like, what are you actually responsible for as a team, as an individual? Let's make sure we're hitting those milestones so that when we come out of 2023, we're like, wow, we accomplished a lot. Now we can jet forward to 24, 25. And then lastly, just to say, it's great to have the strategy, but you have to share it out. So we have some leaves happening on our team. So this is really timely for us. So I've shared this with our TA leadership team, our cross-functional partners, and really wanting to make sure everyone's aligned so that there is no extra ask, there is no confusion on what our mission and values are for this year. So that was really important to really like drive home that mission and vision for us in 23.
Lucy, I love the optimism of a 3-year roadmap. And I say that just given where we've recently been and how nothing that we recently experienced in the last 3 years could have been predicted. Yeah. I'm curious, and I know we didn't talk about this on the front end, what kind of agility have you built into that to account for what might not be expected?
Yeah, I'm happy to share it here because I'm excited for it. But this year, again, is just about the foundational work. So like getting it right. And there's so much that we can do to get it right. And I think that's what we'll talk about in this panel today is how to simplify, how to create better operational excellence. And then year 2 is really about expanding internationally for us. So we have little pockets of global emerging talent, but how do we really lean in? And again, there's a lot of opportunities for us to lean in certain locations, certain teams. So lots of agility there. And then last is expanding our program. So what's next for emerging talent? It doesn't just have to be university talent or early career talent. Like what is next for us? And I think if we're building operational excellence and the international piece, that third piece in 2025 will just come naturally for us. So kind of answers your question, but you know, again, keeping it really high level, there's a lot for us to do within that space for the next 3 years. So we'll see what the next 3 years brings.
Hopefully all good things. That's amazing. Thank you. And thank you again, Ernesto. Let me shift a little bit because we've talked a lot. The word opportunity has been used a lot. There's always opportunity. But when you're dealing with limited resources or a recently downsized team, you've got to be able to say no to certain things. You just can't do it all. And saying no is not easy for a lot of folks. So what are you doing to support your teams and giving yourself permission to say no to non-critical work? Whitney, you want to kick us off?
Sure. So we kind of talked through this, and I think data is such an important thing. So I think it's important to bring up data. For example, does it make sense to go to that school? Are you going to have an impact? I think you're able to really paint the picture and tell the story using the data that you could have, which makes it then objective versus subjective. So it's a little easier, I think, to say no to something if it doesn't really make sense and have that proper impact.
Yeah, data is a buzzword that emerged so many years ago and is still very much at the forefront of, I know for me, pretty much every decision we're making. So, and our CEO just recently put out a piece talking about data-driven decision making. So it is still very, very relevant. Ernesto, how about you? How are you helping your teams say no, and even yourself, to non-critical work?
Yeah. Along the lines with Whitney, right? So like, just what's the data telling you, right? Like, are you getting any ROI by doing something, right? That you're doing before. But the one thing that I also have a lot of transparency here with my team is the financial impact of every decision that they're making, right? It's like having a kid, you know, and I took this model from when my niece and nephews will come and visit me, and I used to work for Disney. They will ask for this mug and this princess thing and this other princess thing, and before you know, you're dropping, you know, $700 on, you haven't even gotten into any attractions, you're still in the parking lot. But giving them the money, right, and then just saying, here is $100, save it and use it accordingly. This is what you have for the day. You want one item that costs $100, buy one item that costs $100. If you want 10 items that cost $10, then you get to buy 10 items that cost $10. So when you think about, we need that this decision of going to a school, right? Does it make sense to go to that school? Well, it makes more sense to go to this school versus another. Can we add this other school? No, you have to eliminate another because you don't have the budget to add one. You only can go to 10 schools. You got to figure out which 10 are you going to be making to going in there. Instead of just saying no, it's the reason behind it, right? So let's talk about why you want to go to this school and why are you going to tell this other school that now you're not going because you don't want to tell this one that you can go. So having that financial clarity, right? Understanding what is your budget, what would it make sense for you to spend the money that you have in and how much money you have in, so you don't feel in the two spectrums. One is that you don't have any money to do anything because then your creativity jujus don't work, or you don't, it's not an endless amount of money either, right? So you don't have $3 million to go and spend on one school event, right? We don't have that money. So, but what is that fine balance on what do we have, what makes sense, what is going to bring results back to the organization, and then understanding that you're going to break some people's heart by telling them no, but you're going to make some other people really happy by telling them yes.
Yeah, that transparency is something you brought up a couple of times. So it sounds like you work really hard to make sure your team has a pretty good line of sight to just about all the details.
I don't make one decision without asking them. That's one thing that's my mojo. If I have one decision that I need to make, hey, everybody, we need to talk. I'm about to make this decision. You have a challenge with it, help me through it. I don't make any decisions without them.
Very good. I'm sure they appreciate it. I'm sure they appreciate it quite a bit. So let's pivot a little bit. When we look at constraints historically, especially when we look in the last 15 to 20 years, people have generally turned to a lot of digital technologies to amplify what they can do. So I'm curious to hear from the three of you, what technologies have you leveraged to help you and your teams multiply your impact. And then I'd also love for you to touch on whether or not technology is helpful or is it a hindrance, and how are you managing that dichotomy? Whitney, why don't you kick us off again?
Sure. So one of our main platforms is Handshake Premium, which is amazing. There does have a pretty steep cost to that, but we are able to divvy that up across TD Bank and TD Securities, which is helpful. I think while technology adds value for sure, I would say that it's important to make sure that you're getting that white glove approach with your candidate. So I think sometimes that's the con to technology, is it can add a lot of benefits, but I do think it takes away from that like one-on-one touch that you typically get with candidates when you're meeting them in person, or you're just able to see them kind of face to face.
Yeah, it's an age-old question, right? High touch or high tech, which one are we going to have? And I don't know that we get that choice in early career TA to pick one or the other. Ernesto, how about you? How are you guys using technology where you are at
I
university?
think that I keep piggybacking on Whitney. I'm not stealing your ideas, Whitney. We do use technology. We do use Handshake as well, the premium version, and it was just like Whitney said, it was quite a battle to get the funding to do it. But we have in the past 3 years have had a very good aha moment when it used to that, right? So you said it, Laura, high touch, very high tech. What we have discovered is that because the fundings are so limited, and it doesn't allow you to go to all the schools in the entire country. By utilizing the technology, we're now opening doors to people that are going to the schools that are not necessarily schools that they're in people's spectrum, right? So Whitney, Lucy, I'm going to ask you a question here, right? So you've heard Georgia Tech, you've heard University of Georgia, you've heard of, what's the other big school that we have? Emory. You've heard of all 3 major schools. There is a 4th school here called Kennesaw State University that you probably have never heard of it, right? Kennesaw State University is, we get 3 times the conversion and the hires out of Kennesaw State University than any other university. Why? Because all the big companies that have the money, they go to these 3 schools. They give those students the opportunity, but these other students that don't have the means to go to these big name schools, but they're just as good, right? We're opening opportunities to them via technology. And I think that has been so eye-opening for us. 2019, when we traveled, we didn't use Handshake Premium. We just went to the schools. We visited 27 schools. That was our present, pretty much. Team of 2, crazy travel schedule. With Handshake, this year we have 714 schools that we represented, that we got presence on this year. So can you do the white glove treatment? Yes, you can at certain level, right? But the technology is allowing us to provide and open so many opportunities to those students that are in the middle of nowhere. Sometimes it's got nothing to do with a big name school. It's just in the middle of nowhere. We're opening opportunities for them that otherwise we would have not been able to do.
I'm a big fan of saying that there's amazing talent on every campus. Unfortunately, you cannot get people representing your organization to every campus. So it's a key value for us here at Forage that we want to democratize access to opportunity. So I'm with you on that one, Ernesto. Lucy, how about you? How is technology working into things at Dropbox? That's kind of a funny question given what Dropbox is, but I meant TA at Dropbox.
Yes, yeah. And maybe I'm gonna bring up something more spicy, but I think is technology always the answer? Is that the right option? Can we lean into the tools that we already have versus adding another one to our belt? And that's something that I think my team is always, asking each other, and then my leader is asking me, is like, is this actually necessary? Is there something that we already have that that we could leverage something similar. And I think with Whitney and Ernesto, they talked about like school selection and using Handshake. We have somebody, I'm fortunate to have somebody on my team who thinks about these things for us, along with everyone on the team, but this person in particular. And so can we utilize the brain power of the team or our current tools to get us where we need to go and still have that white glove experience? So that's something we're always thinking about. And I know, Laura, you were asking for like specific tools. And again, when I'm thinking about tools, what are we already using? So we're already using Greenhouse. Can we create custom questions in our application that helps us filter and streamline and get the right candidates to the right roles? Using technical assessments, we use Code Signal, which has saved us 2,000 interviewer hours over the last year, which has been really amazing. So being more efficient with our interview process. And then lastly, I think we talked about this early on, is using just like the technology we have. So Slack, for instance, jumping on a huddle really quick, and instead of creating another meeting or creating this airtime, we can just, use the technology again that most companies have in whatever form that looks like. So really trying to lean into what we have before I go and ask to ask for more money or more tools, when the answer is typically no. Or you have to have a very good reason. So yeah, it's been looking at being more creative in that sense.
Yeah. I don't know that I was necessarily asking about particular technologies, but you guys all gave some great examples. I happened to have a conversation with a former colleague recently. They're on Slack, and they've decided that because so many Slacks are happening, just to manage that volume and the impression that everything will be instantly answered, that if it doesn't require an instant answer, it doesn't go on Slack. It goes on a meeting agenda, the weekly meeting agenda, to try and keep people from feeling like they're ping-ponging in so many different directions at all times. I cannot remember what movie this was. It's a rom-com from a long time ago, but somebody was talking about Instagram and Facebook and the dating apps and email and text, and they don't know how to answer whomever it is they're dating. I feel like that at work. I feel like I don't know how to keep up with the questions are coming in so many different places. So the technology is amazing, even though we're working in such a distributed and remote and all these hybrid, all these different new ways of working. The technology allows you to feel very in touch, at times bombarded, I would actually suggest. So managing it all is a job. It's a job for sure. We're starting to get some questions in. The one that came in, I'm going to table because it's not necessarily lenient or salient to where we are right now, but we are definitely going to get that question. And another reminder, since I got that question, for others, as you're getting them, please pop them in. I am paying attention. So speaking of meetings, are you guys cutting back on meetings? Are you limiting meetings? And if you are, how are you keeping track of work and staying connected with limited meetings? And I'd be curious, how's everybody reacting if you're changing your meeting cadence or cutting down on meetings? How are you getting, what kind of reactions are you getting to that kind of a move? Ernesto, why don't you kick us off? That way you can't copy off of Whitney this time.
I know. I'll let you copy off of me this time. We had a candid conversation the other day about this. Our team has a no meeting Friday afternoon. There is a calendar block on that I own, that I put on my team, made it in there. Of course, if we have to check in, we will check in, but don't have your balance, right? No meetings after 5, no meetings before 9:30. Save your lunchtime, right? Like, it is so easy just to go on people's calendar and be like, oh, the only time that you're available is at 12 o'clock. Well, that's my time to step away from my desk and just have something, right? And do something. So minimizing the amount of meetings that we have every week. They are not mandatory, right? Lindsay on my team, she it's always keeping us in touch when it comes to, do we have to meet about this? Can we just talk about it? Can we just like IM each other, just get it done? Or just simply jump on a quick call and just ask a question, right? Can you just do this right away? Because when you the way I look at it is that when you block people's time, it feels like you have to be there for that particular time. Even if it's a 5-minute question, you already blocked somebody 30 minutes for it, right? So, or an hour and a half, when the conversation can easily be, hey, just give me a call, put it in an email. Can you put it in an email, right? And just get it over with. So that to me is important. Just what is the balance, right? What is an understanding that being back to back, it's not healthy. Like, no one can be productive. You need to sharpen your tool approach, right? You need to stop every 5 minutes and sharpen your knife, so your knife can be sharp all the time. We don't do that often at work. So yeah, Whitney, you can steal from me. Go for it.
She's taking copious notes and she's just going to repeat it. Ernesto, when we initially talked about this and you gave this example, I wrote down something you said. You said that no meetings on Friday afternoons allows folks to head into the weekend fresh. And that just resonated for me. Thinking about being able to really clear your desk, clear your mind, head into your weekend, which is your time, without thinking about work. So it's sort of the reverse the reverse way to handle the Sunday night scaries. You're like really freeing yourself up on Friday.
It's incredible the amount of people that will put a calendar invite to you on a Friday at 3 o'clock and be like, can you get this done by Monday? No, I cannot get it done by Monday. Like, not gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
And we say
It's a
that
big ask, isn't it?
yeah, we say it all the time, and I think that this is important for everybody here in the call, because we're all in talent acquisition, but it's just cable. It's no one's going to die. Like, it is just cable. So no emergencies here, no life-threatening emergencies in cable.
I had a boss that used to say, we don't do brain surgery. We should keep that in mind. It's not to dumb down what we do, but nobody's going to die over the weekend for what we're doing. That is true. Good point. Lucy, how about you? How are things getting handled in your world when it comes to limiting meetings and organizing things from a meeting perspective?
Yeah, so Dropbox has been pretty vocal about us going virtual first. So we are 100% remote. And as part of us going virtual first, we put out like toolkits and all of that fun stuff. I'm happy to share it. We created something called core collaboration hours. So I'm Pacific Standard Time. So from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And that would be the same if you were Central, Eastern, International, you would follow kind of that 4-hour block. Where work is getting done. So that's when you're supposed to have most of your meetings set, and really like leverage that time to collaborate together. And then outside of that 9 to 1, for instance, it's really up to you how you want to design your day. So that could be blocking out, 2 to 5 or 6 or whatever time, or working late at night if that's where you work best. But it's really your time, again, to leverage focus time, to be productive, to have impact, and really support like the distributed work that we all do. And what we always say at Dropbox is we reserve those meetings for discussion, debate, decisions, and then the rest of the time is really yours to do what you need. And something that Ernesto talked a lot about is like boundaries. And I think with anything, if it's a Friday off, or we used to do Wednesdays off when we were in the office, or core collaboration hours, it's really about the employee setting boundaries for their schedule. So for me, I have a child, so I work at nighttime when she goes to bed sometimes. I don't expect my team to work at night. So they know that this is how I've set my boundaries, but they've set their own. And what I've also done personally is I'll do out of office, like automatic declines for anything after 1 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so that those are really focus times for me. But then my Monday, Wednesday, Friday is open for collaboration sessions, meetings, sometimes happy hour, virtual happy hours, whatever it is, but you're really protecting that time. And I think it's been really nice because it gives us all all the employees the language to use, like core collaboration hours. We all respect each other for that. And it really empowers us to set our own boundaries. So we're not feeling forced to do work on, 4 p.m. on a Friday. You can say, hey, this is outside of core collaboration hours. Can we move it to Monday at 9? Or setting that right expectation. Hey, I'll take a look at this on Monday. Is this urgent? So on and so forth. So it's been really nice. And it was a difficult adjustment at first, because I think we're all used to just working all the time, especially in a virtual COVID world. But it's been a really nice adjustment and great for that work-life balance.
Yeah, there have been lots of stats put out regarding how many more hours everybody worked when we moved to remote. And so remote employees are not necessarily recapturing that commute time for themselves. They're still giving it to their employer largely. So yeah, learning when to stop, to Ernesto's, to sharpen your tools, that's important. Whitney, why don't you round us out on this question? I would just like to note, though, Lucy, if you're doing virtual happy hours on Monday, I want to work for you, because virtual happy hour on Monday sounds amazing. So Whitney, why don't you round us out on this? And we've got already a couple of questions to sink our teeth into. So I'm going to shift there, and we'll shift back to our Q&A if we have time.
Okay. Yeah, I would completely agree with what Ernesto and Lucy said. I think it's important to kind of set your own boundaries for when your working hours are. But I would say a good thing about TD is that our global headquarters in Canada have kind of set a tone for a 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And I think that that's good for a work-life balance across the board, because most businesses do pretty much stick to those hours for meetings and such. So that's been helpful, I think.
Yeah, and everybody has touched on this a little bit, but that lead by example, so important. And Lucy, I heard you say you work best in the evening. I'll often come back on in the evening as well, but have always had the same lack of expectation for my team to be on in the evening as well. Just seems to be when my head kicks in. So just jump on and get it done, kind of a thing. I want to jump to these two questions because they're both really great. And they're both, like I said, something we can sink our teeth into. I want to start with the second one, just because I think that our panel should have, from very different perspectives, some great advice for whomever asks this. So the question is, given that recruiting and talent acquisition tends to be one of the first departments to be laid off, what is your advice to aspiring talent acquisition professionals who are nervous to go into the field, given the layoffs that we've seen lately? So Whitney, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you to start us off with this question. What advice would you give to somebody who's thinking about going into TA and is feeling nervous?
Yeah, that's definitely a tough question given the scenario, but I would say I, a few years back, found my kind of space in campus recruiting, and it was the first time I felt like I knew where I would be 5 years down the road coming out of college. I think it's really cool to be able to meet students when they're super young and kind of figuring out who they are, what they want to do, and to be able to be that person to connect with them first and help them figure out what their path is or why they should come join the company that you're so passionate about or that you love. So I feel like it's pretty cool to be a cheerleader and to bring them in, see them be super excited on day one, and then watch their journey throughout, like an internship and a full-time program. So I do think that the reward is really great. And I think that they'd always be grateful for you and the impact that you had kind of on their kickstart to their career.
Yeah, I have to agree 100% about the reward there. Lucy, Ernesto, how about you? How would you answer to the person who's feeling nervous, given sort of the bullseye that tends to hover around talent acquisition at times?
I 100% agree with Whitney, and I want to keep it positive on that end, but I'm also going to bring us back to reality on this. I don't necessarily agree that TA and recruiting are the first ones to get laid off. It just happens that recruiting is one of those non-revenue generating or pieces of the organization, and normally that's what gets impacted. It's the not revenue generating parts of the organization is what gets impacted. Do we stop hiring more recruiters? Yes, that, and then you have more work that you need to do in the back end. You get more recs, you need to do more with less, exactly what we're talking about here. But if you focus on what Whitney was saying, if this is what you really want to do, and this is what you really feel passionate about, it doesn't matter how many recs you're going to be having, you're going to do it. You're going to do it so good that if there is time that they're going to be laid off, you will be the last one to be laid off. That's what you need to focus on, is how do you become the best person, the most amazing individual in the talent acquisition on your organization, that you become indispensable, that they cannot get rid of you. So focus on that instead of just the fear of, if you go into this, I'm going to be the first one to be laid off. That's more a coincidence than anything else. If this is what you want to do, go for it. Live your dream, fly high, make some people happy, crush some dreams so everybody else that you tell no. But you got to do it from your heart, and then believe in it, and then feel like it's fulfilling to you, and then you'll have a good experience. That's my 2 cents on it.
It's solid advice. I remember once feeling nervous, again, being in that SGA or that non-revenue producing arm of a large organization. And somebody gave me the advice that you're right, you're a cost center, but if you prove the return on that cost, you're going to be fine. So that's where you're going, Ernesto. I agree. Lucy, what about you? What advice would you give to somebody who's feeling nervous to go into an area that might be cut?
I would agree with all 3 of you. I mean, I think being indispensable is part of it. But unfortunately, it is what it is too. So I would say continue down the route. If you're excited about TA, if you're excited about early career, if you're excited about whatever job, you just never know. And we've seen that with our friends, family, neighbors, regardless of what role they're in or what organization they sit in, everyone's being impacted right now. So find what you enjoy. If you really enjoy that TA space, being someone who's helping build someone's future, or hiring, or HR, whatever that looks like, I say do it, because tomorrow we could be hiring hundreds of recruiters again because we've laid off everybody. So I think it's just worth doing what you love and what you're passionate. And I would agree, once you're in that space, is to be as indispensable as possible. So again, finding ways to show your ROI, your return on investment, I think is always important.
Agree wholeheartedly. Yes. So the advice there to whomever asked this question is make sure that you're indispensable, and your passion will hopefully guide you in achieving that. Whoever asked the first question, I promise I'm going there, but another one came in that's a little bit aligned to this. So I want to stick, while our heads are here, I want to stick with that question. So this person asks, what's a good way to continue to develop skills in talent acquisition, especially if you're looking to shift industries? This person is specifically indicating that they're interested in university recruiting or tech recruiting. And for context, they've been in talent acquisition, but mainly with nonprofit organizations. So they're looking to make a pivot to tech or university recruiting. So let me reverse our order here somewhat. Lucy, why don't you kick us off? How would you, you're obviously in tech recruiting and in university recruiting together. So why don't you give this individual a little bit of advice on how they might get seen by somebody like you, for instance?
Yeah, happy to. My sister's in TA for nonprofit. So also a conversation that I've had with her. I would say, and this goes for anyone, if you're interested in a field and you're making a shift, I would say talk to those who are in that field that you know, or talk to folks, even just reach out. URx is a great community to be a part of. LinkedIn, I mean, you're connected to probably so many different people. Reach out to them, have a conversation. And what I typically do is start to make those ties. So what is Lucy doing that's really similar in early career tech recruiting, that's really similar to the work that I do in nonprofits, and start to like make some of those connections. So then as you're building out your resume, as you're answering interview questions, you can say, I don't have direct tech experience, but in my nonprofit experience, this is how it could relate to that experience. So that's what I would say. I'm someone who likes to build relationships and talk, as you can all see. So having these types of conversations is important versus just like reading a job description and being like, I think that could maybe tie in, but really starting to talk, because again, the day-to-day is always very different than your job description that you're probably reading as well.
It's great advice, Lucy. Really being able to pull through the threads that align with what you're currently doing and be able to tell the stories that will substantiate that you can lift and shift the skills into another environment and be as effective, perhaps even more, bringing a blended perspective. Ernesto, Whitney, anything you'd like to add there?
The only thing that I would add in there is start with your own organization. Almost every organization has at some sort of on-campus focus, right? It might not be a dedicated team, but on-campus focus. And when it comes to like activities, career fairs, being on campus, doing anything, or even virtual activities like this, we're always looking for volunteers. How do you can volunteer and get engaged? So you can really learn and understand what we really do when we go out in the field, what type of conversations, what type of questions are we asking the candidates and the hiring managers, trying to understand what is it that they're looking for. And that will help you really know that that's something that you really want to do moving forward. So your local company probably is the best way to start with that.
Good advice, Ernesto. Check out your backyard first. Whitney, anything you want to add?
I agree with both. I think it's just like I always tell the candidates, like networking is such an important thing. And I think it's important to network, figure out, individuals that might be in that space and just hear what their day-to-day would be like during like their peak season or during like the summer program. And I think getting an idea of that will help you figure out, is it the right fit for you? And then if it is, like Lucy said, kind of trying to take those ties for what you currently do to what they do day to day and try and bring that up in the interviews to where you might be a better fit or qualified in their eyes after that if it's not directly there on your resume when you apply.
Great advice. And I'll just add, as I look at my own experience with folks, I think two of the best hires I ever made were career switchers. They were hungry. They really wanted to make things happen and they just put the effort in. So it's convinced me. I'll always consider a career switcher. Speaking of switching, let's switch some gears. We've got some more questions here. I'm going to get to the person who asked that first question, so apologies for making you wait. This person asks, boot camps seem to be more and more prominent in the field of emerging tech talent. What vetting or processes have you found are effective when picking which programs to source from? So, which of the three are using boot camps as part of your TA strategy? And if so, how are you vetting them? Lucy, you raised your hand. Why don't you start us off?
Yeah, that's me. And we're thinking about it in a very similar way that we think about university recruiting. So what does the boot camp offer? How many are, graduating or leaving that boot camp? What type of technologies or languages are they teaching for us technical boot camps? And as we kind of dive into other types of boot camps or programs, that's typically what we're looking for. So if we're looking for a certain industry, what are they providing that we can continue to tap into? Very similar how we think about university hiring. So what universities do we want to focus on? Who's graduating from those universities? What type of talent is coming from the boot camps or universities? So again, diversity, but for career switchers, typically the boot camp office can tell us, what type of industries are really focused and coming into those boot camps. And to Laura's point, like, been really great. We've seen great success through our apprenticeship program for career switchers in that way.
Yeah, Cognizant's apprenticeship program was definitely heating up, and Cognizant was also a consumer of boot camp talent. So you're right. It's an emerging talent stream, especially for tech talent, for sure. Whitney, Ernesto, are either of you recruiting from boot camps? And if so, you want to weigh in here? Whitney's giving me a brush off. Ernesto, how about you at MDC Universal?
No, not a central division. We haven't had the business need to start going through that. Most of the opportunities that will be beneficial from that are all in Philadelphia, and they do their own recruitment over there.
Gotcha. Another question we've got here in the chat. What advice would you give to teams that are told to pull back on their on-campus spend? What data do you capture when going on campus to prove the ROI of face-to-face time with students? Who'd like to start here? Ernesto.
I'll start. And if there's anybody here from any school, any admin, any career advisor, career thing, close your ears, please. I have yet in 15 years to find value on career fairs. In 15 years.
Ernesto, we're not in the same room, but if we were, I would be kissing you.
I understand why career fairs happen. For branding perspective, great to be on campus, great to be able to go in there. But if you think that you're like, in every year, career fairs become more and more expensive. Career fairs are how this career services team can fund all of their activities. And we understand you want $700, I'll give you $700. I go to a career fair for you, but I will not go in there thinking that I'm going to find a hire in it, because it just does not happen. So if you were to answer it, not to go into a lot of details in here, if you want to pull back on a huge amount of investment, stop going to career fairs. You can still go to the school. You can still have activities that are non-cost activities that you can do on campus. And you can do all of those either in person or virtual, whatever it is that you want to do. But that right there will save you thousands of dollars, and it will give you a whole lot more ROI than what you can. We have 5 years in our program here. We have yet to hire a single student from a career fair. It's just the world is changing. It just doesn't happen. Students that this is the data that we collect, right? Students that go to career fairs are students that don't have a job already. So are they the best students? I'm not saying that they're not the best students, but the really good ones were already snatched a long time ago. So what can you do? Start your process earlier so you can snatch the students before the career fair even happens, right? So you don't feel like you need to have a need that you need to go into that career fair. But to me, I am lucky that my boss feels the exact same way that I do. And I meet with colleges and universities all the time, and they always invite me to the career fair. And this is something that I am really good at it, and it's telling them no. First question that we talk about today, like just no, and I'm honest with them, and they can't argue that because they know it too. So that's very passionate about that. I can talk about that for months, but we don't have months to talk about.
We don't, but someday you and I are going to be at a meeting together and we'll kibbutz about this one. Lucy, Whitney, how are you guys handling that when you have to pull back and prove ROI? How are you handling that?
Yeah, I think it was something that we started to pull back on even before the pandemic. So we would go to a career fair, for instance, but we'd couple it with a networking event or a Dropbox specific event. And so we're finding confusion. Are we finding this person at the career fair because we met them at the career fair, or are we finding them at our networking event? What actually was the turning point for them to join Dropbox or for us to make the offer or whatnot? And what we found, like going back to data, what we found is there were multiple touch points that we were meeting this candidate, but where we were actually closing them was at our more intimate events. So our kind of like later stage events or smaller networking Dropbox events or dinners or whatever we were putting on. So I think looking at your own data and seeing where you're actually hiring these folks The other piece is around like ROI, is what I would suggest is looking at how much money you're spending. So you could spend 25K at, being part of a university, a career center, and you get to go to their career fairs and so on and so forth. What could you do with that 25K? Like when we're talking about doing more with less, I would sit down and come up with another plan and say, actually, I could do all of these things and more for 10K. And we could save that other 15 to create a new program, to fly us somewhere else, to go to a new conference, to try whatever the case may be. So that's what I would suggest. And anytime if a leader can save some money or can see more ROI with less, you're singing their praises. So I say try that and see if that's an option. I also would say that it doesn't always have to be face-to-face to get that white glove experience. Whitney, you could probably talk about this more as a recruiter, but there's a lot that recruiters can do to build trust and get that face time without actually having face time.
Yep, I would agree. I think I agree with the not going to career fairs. I actually prefer bringing individuals in-house so that they can see the culture and kind of meet more business reps in specific areas, and even doing, in a sense, like a TD career fair or whatever company you're at, bringing multiple businesses to one area for students to get to learn about the different spaces. But I agree. I think from like a white glove approach for recruiters, it could just be even having like scheduling quick, calls with people just to get to know them, for them to get to know you, the company, the roles that you support, and then inviting them to future events.
So it
That's a
sounds
great
like
point.
making sure that you are going to give your organization a way to be distinctive amongst others. Where are your high impact, high touch ways to surface highly motivated candidates, and how do you get them through your pipeline expediently is what we're focusing on. Just as a plug, happens to be all the same things Forage focuses on, but we'll leave that there. And if you want to find out more, hit me up later. We've got another question here in our Q&A, which is great. You guys, thanks for being so interactive with us today. This person asks, what strategies have you used to help convince your leaders of the benefit of having early talent programs? Also, sort of one of those Sunday night scary thoughts you have when you're falling asleep, and what if our whole program is gone? So who wants to start here?
I'm happy to kick it off.
Sure,
This is something that I think I deal with on a daily sometimes, especially as we're building relationships with new organizations within Dropbox. What I have done is look at the last 2, 3, 5 years of our hires. What impact have they made? Are they now leaders at Dropbox? Are they getting promoted faster? What are their review ratings, for instance? Like we use ratings. And so that's what I would say, is looking at what they've done so far, and then what you're paying them, because cost always comes into it, and how much you can get for the ROI of an early career talent hire versus somebody coming in at a senior level. I also spent a lot of time with our leadership team looking at our current early career stats. So how many early career hires have we made? And is this the percentage we want for Dropbox? Do we want it to be, just throwing a random number, under 5%, or do we want that higher? And what's our 3-year plan for that? And how do we want to get there? What teams do we need to invest in? So on and so forth. So having some of those strategic conversations have been really beneficial in using emerging talent as a lever, instead of just saying like, we need this, you should need it too. So and I'm happy to talk more about that. If you want to reach out to me on LinkedIn, we could talk about all day.
That's terrific. Thank you, Lucy. And just being conscious of time, I think we're going to have to move to close at this point and say our farewells. I think one of the things we really pulled out of today is that doing more with less is not necessarily having to work longer or harder or faster. It's really about doing more of the right things and finding ways to renegotiate, reprioritize, and make sure that you're focusing on what are the most critical tasks. So in other words, this is about working smarter, not harder. So look at this as an opportunity. Be strategic in your approach. That will help set you apart and establish a really positive example, just like the leaders that joined us today. Thank you all so much for being with us, have all done. So Carolyn, I'm going to turn things over to you and say thank you to all of our participants for being with us. I see almost all of you guys stuck with us, even though we're over. So many thanks to all of you as well.
Yeah, thank you all so much for joining. Thank you so much to our incredible, insightful panelists for your time today. And just a quick plug, our annual URx conference is coming back again in May. And so feel free to head over to urxconference.com to learn more, to potentially sign up for a speaker, give us topic recommendations, and just let's stay connected on social media. So thank you all so much and see you at the next event.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.